So, I was called in by one of my interviewers who was a sort of middle-aged Japanese lady and was sat down in front of a table that the three interviewers were sitting at. I just had a chair, they had a table. And from what I hear, it's standard to have three interviewers. I was interviewed by an American man, perhaps in his early 30s, a middle-aged Japanese woman, probably in her late 40s or 50s, and then an older Japanese woman who was older than 50s, maybe. They didn't tell me their names or what they did for a living, and they each had a copy of my application and essay in front of them, and it looked like they had just finished reading it. So, before I get into what questions they asked me specifically, I just want to let you know that the most important questions that you need to have good answers for and really think about are why jet, why Japan, and why teaching. The rest are just details. You got to have good answers for these. Because this is what's really important. So here's what they asked me. And I'm really just going to tell you the questions, and if you want to read my answers, I've included them in my blog. So if you're really curious about what I had to say, then you can read that in my blog. I don't want to make this video too long. So first, why do you want to do the JET program? I talked about how when I was 12 I read Learning to Bow, that book by Bruce Fuller, and that really made me want to participate in that program, my interest in Japanese culture and Japanese history. And then they asked, it says here on your application that you want to get your PhD in Japanese history. Why aren't you applying for the Monbugakusho scholarship instead? Well, I talked about how I always wanted to do the JET program and how I really, really wanted to teach, and teaching was important to me. The people who made a difference in my life were my teachers, yada, yada, yada. And also, my Japanese is not good enough to get that scholarship. It's just, like, that's for, like, grad students. Anyway. And they really zoned in on this next question because it was on my application, and they're going to try to ask you difficult questions. So the JET guy asked me this, and he was obviously kind of playing the hard ass in the interview. On your application, it says that you've taken antidepressants. Do you think this will negatively affect your time on JET? Yeah, the depression question. Yeah. So I answered that question and talked about how it taught me more about my stressors and how to make myself happy even if I'm encountering difficult situations. And then he didn't let it go. He said, say that you're in JET and it's wintertime, you're really disappointed with your job, you feel like you're just a human tape recorder, and culture shock has set in. What will you do? I talked about what I would do. Go out, meet people, that sort of thing. Exercise. And then one of the older women asked me, what place in Japan are you most interested in? I said everywhere, but then I clarified about why I listed Tohoku as my first choice on my application. And then the other woman asked me, oh, it says on your application that you rock climb. Will you tell us more about this? And I talked about growing up in Colorado and rock climbing and camping and how I'm outdoorsy, and they seem to enjoy that. And this kind of feeds into what I've been talking all along about finding those things about yourself that are unique and interesting, even if they don't necessarily have anything to do with Japan or teaching on the JET program, because they make you stand out. They kind of demonstrate who you are as a person, more than just, hey, I love Japan. So I think it's really important to identify those things about you. Like rock climbing has nothing to do with teaching English in Japan, but it does demonstrate to them what sort of person I am and the sort of things I enjoy and the fact that I'm capable of putting myself in situations like that, adventurous sort of things. So I think it's important to find those unique things about yourself because it'll make you memorable at the very least. And then they said, it says in your application that you speak some Japanese. Can we ask you some questions in Japanese? And I said yes. And they asked me very simple questions like, what are your hobbies? What movies do you like? What Japanese food do you like? And I answered with my horrible, horrible grammar. And I made a joke about my horrible, horrible grammar, and they laughed at it because it is in fact very horrible. And they also laughed that I said my favorite Japanese food was gyudon, because apparently only like old male Japanese construction workers like gyudon. Well, and me. And then the guy asked, name the 3 most important people in American history, which was a weird question, I guess, because I majored in East Asian history. But I answered, and it was a dumb answer. And my last one was really stupid. I literally said, And going into the whole Barack Obama being elected president thing, I'd have to say Martin Luther King Jr. Wow, talk about making myself sound like an idiot. Anyway, and the last question they asked was, tell us more about your job at the zoo. I worked as an educational interpreter at a zoo. I designed educational programs and also handled exotic animals like snakes and tarantulas, which is probably why I've been placed on an island with a lot of bugs on it, because I'm not afraid of them. Anyway, after that, they asked me if I had any questions for them, and I really foolishly said, were any of you in the JET program? Which, of course, only one of them was, because the other two were Japanese women. But after they had laughed at me about that, and I said something like, oh, I'm smooth, like James Bond, I asked him if he had any advice for me, if I was accepted going into it, and he said, just be flexible, and kind of lectured me for a little bit about flexibility. And that was it. I might have forgotten a few of the less important questions, but it was really short. My interview felt really quick, and they didn't ask me any horrible questions. They seemed to like me, even though the former JET was obviously, being kind of hard-ass on me. And I was pretty nervous, and I told them like 3 times that, wow, I'm really nervous, and maybe that wasn't a good thing to do, but I got shortlisted. But most importantly, like when you go in there, you've got those 3 basic answers prepared. Why Japan? Why JET? Why teaching? And after that, like, it's just, show that you're open to stuff and you're willing to kind of roll with the punches and smile and be Genki, because they want you to be Genki and open and happy and that. So I did talk with a few other people about their experiences, and some of the interesting things that they said they were asked were, one of my friends they basically said, I see you don't have very good grades. What do you have to say about that? So if anyone's wondering if grades do count, they do. So be prepared to explain why you have bad grades if you do. Another person was asked, like, I see you've studied blank language, whatever language. Sing us a song in that language. And so he had studied like Thai, and they were like, sing us a song in Thai. And someone else was asked if you had to give a presentation on any subject about America, what would it be? So, sometimes situational questions. Personally, I wasn't asked to do a sample interview. I wasn't I wasn't asked to give a sample lesson, and I wasn't asked to do a self-introduction. So people who say, oh, if you're asked these things, definitely means you're in or not. I was shortlisted. I wasn't asked them, so I don't really know why people ask what they do and what they don't. So yeah, that's the interview. If you have got any specific questions, or you want to talk about your interview experience, leave a response, leave a comment. And again, I have links to my blog where I talk about my answers in more detail, and the questions I used to prepare for my exam are also listed there. And that is to the left, to the left. So that's all for now. I'll do another thing soon. Bye.